Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of SwingBadder. I am joined by our resident expert, Dad. Welcome to the SwingBadder podcast. How are you doing, sir, with your life?
Today I'm ambulatory, which is great, so we're doing fine.
That's good to hear. Obviously, we're missing one of the tribe, but I think he'll be okay. So we got some fun topics to go over here. We are in minor league season of baseball, which is fun. Lots of players trying to make it. Teams are getting ready. We're pretty excited. Who is the Diamondback that you're most excited about from the spring training news? You always tell us about the guys who you don't care about, but what about a player that is going to just tear it apart this year that you love?
What I'm hearing from my experts, the inside folks, is Corbin Carroll is tearing it up right now. He hurt his back a couple days ago, but it's day-to-day, so that's okay. And so that's exciting. Generally speaking, the guys who are going to be in the bullpen so far have looked pretty strong. You know, nothing counts till opening day. And we haven't had the injuries yet, right? Every spring training we lose a pitcher for a couple months, so that's got to happen yet. But so far, so good.
It's pretty nice. I would say Carroll coming back hot is a huge increase for Diamondback fans. He had a tough year last year for a while. So he's just ripping it, gripping it, doing great things.
Hey, I think they're going to be a good team. Unfortunately, good in that league is second place. So you got to try to play for second place. So,
well, Dad, you did say there's injuries. You know, that the first place projected team, the Dodgers, could have, several injuries at one position to get down to the regular Major League Baseball teams.
They're kind of deep, but we'll see.
They're tad deep if you look at the Dodgers. What you would say is college football, you have to be pretty deep now to win a championship. I think the Dodgers are built for the college football playoffs.
As you and I have discussed, Brendan, they have created a team that even Dave Roberts can't mess up.
Yep. Hats off to the best manager to ever have talent. Interesting aspects here. That's the NL West. That's your insider there from Arizona, which is great. I think the biggest topics that we wanted to go over, as we always do on Batter Sports and SwingBadder in particular, is the financials. So what's shocking that, Dad, we made a couple notes of, is the Mets are outpacing everybody with, I believe, the Yankees, then Dodgers. And what are you reading about why the Mets feel so good about this?
What I read was that Steve Cohen says you can't lose money in baseball by spending if you got a winning team. No matter how big the fines are, he makes more of it back with the revenue he's creating with his team. So he's basically telling baseball, go ahead and arrest me. I'm going to make money on the arrest, so keep going.
It's interesting because aren't the fines that are levied against the teams in the insurance cap, does that go back to MLB or to the other teams? Isn't there also a minimum cap of what you have to spend in Major League Baseball?
I think so. I'm not really aware of all the financials that go on. It's like most financial agreement doesn't really make a lot of sense, but that's the way it is.
But it's good to know if you're a Mets fan that he's not worried about spending more money. So if he's going to add more players, I mean, he obviously had the big signing this year, which, we'll be able to follow all year, but he also got all of the players back that he wanted. I think the Mets are in a good spot.
And we'll talk about this in a future show. I've got concerns about their starting pitching, but they're a loaded team for sure.
Yep, there are the few. But what makes me laugh about that is you have one owner like the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers, who are just going out there and getting talent, and then you have so many teams on the bottom of the barrel who are not spending money, who are just trying to scrape together teams. And this year, what's interesting is in Major League Baseball, for the first time, one is due to a hurricane issue. The other is due to a help us find a place to play. You have two teams that are going to be playing in basically minor league stadiums this year. The Tampa Bay Rays will be playing in George Steinbrenner Stadium, and the Oakland A's, now the Sacramento A's, are going to be playing. They found a home in some little minor league stadium that's very interesting to say the least. So you have two baseball teams that literally cannot draw a lot of people. Tampa never had this issue, but now they're outdoors. They're not indoors, which will be fun for all of those players. And the A's are now in Sacramento, which will maybe I would say if you were going to ask me who to wager on who's going to get more fans, I would say Sacramento.
Yeah.
But it will be interesting to see people bringing beach towels and sitting in the outfield, basically the lawns that they create in these stadiums. Because if you've ever been to a spring training game here in Arizona or in Florida, they create a very relaxed stadium atmosphere, and they have these nice outfield sections that are just grass, or what they call is, lawn seats. They're not seats. You just pay general admission and you go sit wherever you want. So this will give a chance for a lot of fans to see baseball in a new light if there was supposed to be like a nationally televised game, or if you just want to watch them and watch the highlights of watching the A's and see who's laying around in the outfield, or vice versa with Tampa, which will be very different than, say, having real seats everywhere.
Brendan, you're more up on this than me, but are there any nationally televised Major League Baseball, or is it all cable to get a baseball game?
This is wonderful that you asked this. Huge in the news was ESPN walking away from their Sunday night baseball game.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just walking away from that. Major League Baseball is trying to figure out what to do with that. I would imagine they're going to negotiate with a streaming service. They will have something. But they still have the nationally televised games with Fox and things of that nature. But I believe the ESPN Sunday night contract has gone by the way of falling out of favor with the executives at ESPN. They didn't want to pay the $500 million. They wanted to pay $220 million. So Major League Baseball is currently shopping their nationally televised game. I would imagine that they're going to go to streaming services, but that's where everything's going. I think stay tuned. The MLB commissioner is working on those things, but I can't see the A's or Tampa more so than the A's getting that game, but I wouldn't imagine Tampa's going to get the game in Tampa. I can't imagine them televising any of these games for a national audience just because it will look so minor league baseball.
What would be a twist of fate? It's not unimaginable that both Tampa and Sacramento could make the playoffs. Wouldn't that be something with minor league ballparks?
Well, I can tell you Tampa has much better odds than Sacramento. However, Tampa is in a much harder division than Sacramento. But you're not wrong. I mean, that would be very comical to see a team like Tampa host. I would imagine that they would be working around the clock to get the stadium back up if they're going to be ready for that. We are, 8 months away before the playoffs. So they do have some time. But in the meantime, the whole season has been, we're going to play here. So Tampa has a chance for rainouts. They have a chance for weather. That never happened, which will be interesting. I don't think I'm as concerned about, again, Sacramento, what do you get for weather there? It's going to be nice, same temperature all year long. Not really an issue.
Right, that's true.
So Tampa is going to have the problem with the heat, the humidity. Really, be interesting to see how the home run projections are in these minor league stadiums. But just the experience of looking out in the outfield and seeing these mom and dad's autos.
That would be a good bucket list thing.
Go watch them
this year, go to one game in Sacramento and one in George Steinbrenner Field just to say you've been there. Take a selfie. And
save the ticket?
Well, don't even stay for the game. Just take a selfie and people will think you were there, and you got it.
You can do it in July and experience both weather climates. You can see how Sacramento, how you feel. In the third inning of the Tampa game, you can be dying.
Could be.
So that's what's happening. It's interesting because, again, you have these owners that are spending a lot. And we just mentioned two that don't want to spend, and they're now playing in minor league stadiums. I would imagine that if the Mets had to move out of their stadium, I don't think he would be singing the same song of making the same amount of money. He would be very upset about the cut in revenue, advertising, marketing, sales, all of that. But I think the A's are like, hey, we may actually get an uptick in fans this year.
Could. No, I think it'd be hard not to.
Well, we'll see. We'll check the numbers, but there is a possibility both of these teams could attract more fans with a smaller stadium.
Well, I don't see how Sacramento can't outdraw Oakland. No one wanted to go see them in Oakland because they were leaving. Especially because
they were going to be especially because they're moving. Which brings me to the next topic that I have, which is stadiums, because there's two teams that have been around the longest with the oldest stadiums. It's your Diamondbacks and your Colorado Rockies. Now, they came into the league, and they're the newest expansion teams in baseball, but both of these stadiums were built with the understanding that having 40,000-plus people at a baseball stadium is great. I think, having been to both of these stadiums several times, going to college in Colorado and then obviously living in Arizona, I think both of these stadiums are too big. They're very massive. They hold too many people and not enough people go to the game, so it always feels rather empty in both stadiums. So I think that the nice mix would be between that minor league stadium and the Diamondbacks and the Rockies. But both of those ownership groups have complained to the cities about how old their stadiums are, how run down they are, and how they need a new facility if they're going to keep playing baseball in these cities, which I know as a person in Arizona, I kind of laugh about because are you serious? That's like the newest team with the newest arena in our state.
Following sports in Arizona is a challenge because the teams basically all lose. So it's hard. I mean, the Coyotes moved out, and half the people in town don't even know that yet. They what? They weren't.
You're not wrong. I had this conversation. My boys play hockey. I had a conversation at the ice rink. He goes, "How are the Coyotes doing this year?" I said, "Well, they're doing okay in Salt Lake. They moved to Salt Lake." I said, "Yeah, they're not here anymore."
So
to your point, like Arizona, you could have a conversation. The Arizona Diamondbacks could leave, and I think a lot of fans would not know about it.
Well,
because that's our fan base.
Yeah, it's a big city. We got the population, but we'll see.
Population without the popularity.
Yeah, that's obvious. It seems like winning drives that bus, doesn't it? If your team's a winner, I mean, right now everybody in Philadelphia is overjoyed. They got the Phillies, they got the Eagles, and they're all doing well, and they don't even think about the fact that their NBA team stinks, but they don't care. They got some winners.
Their Flyers need a rebuild as well, but the fans still show up to those. I will always argue that the East Coast fans are fans. They are fanatic by the definition. If you come to the West Coast, or I always call it, once you cross the Mississippi, we put something different in the water. You want to go when they're winning because you want to be part of a winner. And again, LA does that really well because LA always has the winners, and so they attract the celebrities and the stars, and everyone's there to watch the winner. If they lost a lot, nobody would show up there, or you wouldn't even hear about them, as we know, because we have lots of family in LA. And when they're losing, you don't hear anything, and when they're winning, you hear everything. Mm-hmm. So the LA market and the Arizona market are very similar. We just don't win like LA. We don't even come close. We're kind of like the minor league stepchild, if you will. So you have all these states that are trying to win, and then you have California, which has won because it has the monopoly out here of everything winning.
I'll concede that the cities in the northeastern part of the United States have the craziest, most passionate, insane fans. I don't know their numbers, but I mean, when you go to a ball game in Boston or Philly or New York, you're likely sitting next to people who not only know the players, but they know who's pitching tomorrow. Now, you go in the West Coast, and it's like they come late, leave early. They don't even know the names of the players. They cheer when the scoreboard comes up and says, "Make noise." Oh, we have to do something. And then they go home. They're a different caliber of fans.
And to just cement this point for everybody, if you live in Arizona, one of the articles every year they come out with is, what's the new food items that you can get at the Arizona Diamondback Stadium?
Yep.
Not who are the new players, what are we looking like, who is the new manager. It's literally what are the food items that we can attract you with, and they always have some kind of flair or an item that is you have to try this ridiculous item to feel better or whatever.
Well, they have a restaurant now from Guy Fieri. Diners, drive-ins, and dives. That's in the stadium now.
So we don't. I can't imagine going in Philadelphia and reading about what restaurant is in the stadium, or Boston, or the Yankees. Now I can see that as like that's a perk, that's nice, but I can't see them writing articles about it. And maybe it's because we don't even write articles much about the players, because we're just we're Arizona fans. We're kind of interested.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the spring training, I guarantee you're excited about what you're seeing. The majority of people in Arizona are like, tell me in June. Do we have a chance? Should I go see it? Do you want to give me a free ticket?
Mm-hmm.
So, but the stadiums, it's interesting. You have the two larger stadiums and two older teams that are looking for new stadiums, because new stadiums are a thing and everyone's been building new stadiums, other than the traditional ones that you have here in the market, like the Cubs, Boston. Those stadiums have obviously stood the test of time. I believe the Dodgers Stadium as well, but the majority of all baseball beyond those authentic or classic stadiums have all changed. Even the Yankees, Mets are brand new. All these stadiums have a new flair because you can build a new stadium, you get the land rights, you build more buildings. Again, the sad case of an owner making money on real estate.
Brendan, you noticed you mentioned to me before we started that you had a couple of questions we could talk about. Do you want to bring some of those up?
Yes. I've been diving through the stadiums, which is interesting because we have two minor league ones. We dive through the larger ones. Now, the next question for you is the comeback player of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we all know, comeback player of the year goes to a player who was either out, injured, had some kind of travesty of an event. So I'm just going to give you the American League players that you will know very, very well, and you can tell me who you think has the best chance to win, and then I'll tell you who Vegas thinks has the best chance. So you have a player, you may have heard of him, Mike Trout. Didn't play very well, didn't play very much last year due to an injury. In the American League, you also have Jacob deGrom, as I think he's listed pretty much yearly at this point.
Yeah.
You also have Trevor Story, big signing out of Boston. He came from the Rockies. He's in the American League. Hasn't really played since his contract. Bo Bichette of the Blue Jays, fantastic player. Again, these are players that didn't fulfill their contract obligation last year due to injuries. So of those players I got one more. Max Scherzer. He's now with the Blue Jays as well. He's on the list. A couple other folks, but those are the main names I would say. I think you have two that are probably at the top. Who would you say would probably you put some money on to be the comeback player of the year?
Well, I haven't kept up with their medical conditions because that's what hinges. I mean, if they can't play, they can't play. I am interested in Trevor Story, but he hasn't played at all. How bad is his injury? I mean,
he's a little further down than the others, but he's definitely got some good odds.
The other guys, I mean, like I would never put a 5 cents on Jacob deGrom. I mean, he hasn't pitched a half a season and seems like forever.
Even though he's in the spring training system, people feel pretty good about him.
He's great at spring training. It's his specialty.
Oh, dear God.
I would not put any money on Max Scherzer. I mean, I think he's got an age problem, and he's been hurt too frequently. I mean, age and injury is a double whammy against that.
I can tell you that he's been reported, Mr. Trevor Story has been reported as feeling very healthy for the first time in a long while. But again, to your point, isn't that what you're supposed to say in spring training? You shouldn't be saying, man, I feel older than I've ever felt, and this is bad.
I would just say this. The list you gave me,
yep.
I'm more attracted to Trevor Story's upside than the other guys.
Well, that is interesting because if you were going to pick Trevor Story, the odds you would get are 1,000 to 1.
Wow.
The low end, or the people you make the least money on, is Mike Trout and Jacob deGrom.
Yeah, I see that Trout's a good bet because he just has an average Trout season. It'll be player comeback, I guess.
He's had a couple years now where he's been injured, and there have been fluke injuries. And the other thing that I think has been more noticeable to me is the baseball hitting the player in the hand.
Yeah.
That seems to be a real, because the problem with that injury that happens to those that are playing on the inside, if you will, it's not that it breaks your wrist or breaks your finger. It's that you can't swing a bat for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. And then after that time frame, then you got to get back into baseball, and then you're out like 10 to 16. And then when you come back, it's like, do you feel as good? And the only guy I think it's interesting because the only player that rings a bell to me about protecting himself is Ohtani because of the way he swings. Because he has that sweeping swing and he puts that giant Barry Bonds gear on his elbow. So when he's leaning back, it's like if you're going to have an inside pitch hit him, the chances of hitting the elbow are much higher than the hand. Like last year, Mookie Betts got hit in the wrist and I believe injured him for quite a while, which is, again, put him out for a bit. I just don't see him having that same kind of injury. But I don't know how you protect it. I know a lot of guys wear a lot of gear now, but you got to step into the swings.
Who do you like for comeback player?
Of all the players, I think Trevor Story is an interesting pick because of, we're West Coast biased. So we watched him in Colorado and he was fantastic. Boston has a great lineup, and he hasn't been good since he signed. But this is that time of I would say, when I look at contracts and I look at players when they sign, the first year or two is a player trying to do more than they should. So they end up either not performing as well as they would have when they signed the first time of that deal. So the second year they get a little better. So this is, Trevor Story has a good shot of like, there's calm here. Other players have signed. There's not a lot of pressure on him. Now he's a player. Just go play. But to your point about Mike Trout, I think DeGrom wins it hands down if he pitches a whole season.
That's just, in my brain, doesn't calculate.
He hasn't, but he's so good that he's a no-brainer. So again, it goes back to who are you betting on doesn't get injured? Trevor Story, Mike Trout, Jake DeGrom. I would say DeGrom's third. I would say Mike Trout is second, and then Trevor Story would be my least likely candidate to get hurt. Because that's what you're betting on. You're betting on a player who just stays healthy. Because all these players are excellent. Yeah. It's not like DeGrom lost his stuff, Mike Trout can't hit, and Trevor Story is a bad player. They're excellent players. Can they stay healthy? And I would say, based on the injuries of Trout and the injuries of DeGrom, that's what I would look at. From my perspective, that's what I would look at.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the National League, I think, is like a no-brainer. So you have the Braves' incredible all-star who's coming off of a terrible injury, Ronald Acuna Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Other people in the National League that are mentionable, Sandy Alcantara,
yeah.
Cantera, thank you. You have a Brandon Woodruff of the Brewers. Then you have like Justin Verlander. He's now in the Giants.
That ain't happening.
So I think he's like 44, 43. So like, in my opinion, I think there's really only one candidate in the National League because he's so much better than everyone else, and he's the only guy on the list. The American League, you have several choices of great players, but it'll be interesting to see how that irons out.
Yeah, so it's really on both these sides. It's health. Who's healthy? Acuna's the best player, and Trout.
Not even close.
Acuna and Trout are the two best players.
Not even close.
If they're healthy, then they would be the leaders for sure.
And both of them have a chance to be an MVP. However, I would say in the National League with Ohtani now pitching, I mean, can he win the MVP forever? Is that just how it's going to hit? The only chance he doesn't get injured is the only chance he doesn't win is if he doesn't get injured. And then with the new Major League Baseball stolen base rule, I don't know how any of these people aren't stealing 40 bases with the base path thing going on. So that's the comeback player. Those odds are based on your local gambling app, what have you. But if you were a betting man, you'd put a couple bucks on Trout, a couple bucks on Acuna, and just cash it in because they're the best players, and just an easy bet in your opinion. Baseball is talking about expansion. And there's 2 teams or 2 cities that are leading, but a third put out a great proposal this last bit. So you have the Salt Lake City, which just got the Coyotes from Arizona, and you have Nashville, who both of these zones, both of these areas are asking and wanting a major league team. Now, those are the 2 cities that are in the lead. Portland is coming up with some great plans and trying to attract baseball up there as well. What are your thoughts on the top 3 to get a team?
I like Nashville for the reason that Tennessee doesn't have Major League Baseball at all, or I don't even know how close it is. You have to go to Florida or Atlanta. Atlanta would be the team that probably captures Tennessee. You'd have to compete with the Braves. But Tennessee's a growing state. I would be tempted there. I have a hard time picturing why Salt Lake City is so attractive, but it must be.
I can give you a couple reasons about Salt Lake. It's the weather for the summertime is fantastic in Salt Lake. You also they're trying to get all of the teams up there. They have NBA, obviously, with the Jazz. They just got the NHL team, which they're very committed to. They have this would be the baseball team that takes them to the next height.
Right.
So, they're trying to get all the teams in Salt Lake. Nashville's trying to get all the teams in Nashville. Portland's trying to add another sports league, which they don't have a lot. So.
Okay.
So I could see in my lifetime, in the next 10, 15 years, Salt Lake getting, this would be the final pin for Nashville. They already have the hockey team. They already have the football team. This would be, the baseball team, and they have the hockey team. So this would give them all 4 sports. And I think Salt Lake is trying to get all 4 sports.
Did you say that you think Salt Lake and Nashville are 2 leaders?
Yes, they're the 2 leaders right now.
Uh-huh.
Per everybody who's writing, those are the 2 leaders, and Portland is making a very hard push to get a baseball team.
Well, you and I have talked about this. In the old days, it was always attendance. If you didn't have attendance, you'd move. Philadelphia Athletics moved to Kansas City, and then they moved to Oakland. The Boston Braves moved to Milwaukee. I mean, when you didn't have attendance, you just move, okay, because you can't be supported. But, I mean, Miami has no attendance.
No.
Tampa has very poor attendance, but there's no talk of those 2 teams leaving, which means that attendance is not what drives the bus anymore. I think, what is it, TV contracts or something? I don't know.
All of the teams are making money off the TV contracts. That is 100,000. That is how they're making their money. These TV deals, they need to get better national deals now with the streaming services and then the local TV revenue. So there's some of that happening. It's the newer team. It would be fresh. So wherever they go, I think they would get that fresh vibe. People would want to support them.
I think that baseball, being a slower sport and its great history, it has an affinity towards senior citizens who probably aren't going to go to the ballpark anyways, but they would subscribe to it. So that's why I think in Florida, I'm making this up totally, that they have an audience there of retired people who would like to follow the hometown team on TV. I don't know if that's true or not, but not necessarily go to the game.
I think that the other thing that Florida has as a draw is you have a lot of retirees there. So when the Yankees come in or the Mets come in to visit, teams can go see the local team that they remember. It's somewhat similar to Arizona here. We are a retirement community. So when baseball came, it made a lot of sense because a lot of people could go see their team. The Cubs used to own this city before the Arizona Diamondbacks came in. owned spring training here. It was the Cubs' second home. Chicago has a huge presence in Arizona. So when the Chicago Cubs came here, that was the draw. Now it's the Dodgers, obviously, because they're in our division, and that's what happens. But again, these communities, people want to go see those other teams. So I could see Nashville being that because a lot of people transplanted to Nashville. I could see Salt Lake being that because a lot of people transplanted to Salt Lake. Portland is an interesting town. I think that they're probably a wild card. I love their proposal. I love the drawings that they did, the renditions, everything that they had. But I think Portland is probably on the outside looking in just because of that kind of Nashville can get that kind of community, and they can build a really cool stadium around kind of that Nashville vibe, if you will. And then Salt Lake has a vibe of sports that's coming up, and you can build around that. There's a lot of excitement for them naming their new hockey team. So I could see that's why I think both of those are just the common sense leader.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me. We got two guys here. We're missing the third vote, so it's hard to really get a consensus. But it's an interesting discussion. How imminent do they think expansion is? How close?
I believe they're looking at the next 2 years.
Wow.
2 to 3 years. They're trying to get two more teams in baseball. All the sports leagues are trying to expand. You got more television markets. You get more, now that everyone has more games. It's just the natural, this is what's going to occur. It would be interesting to me to see how you bring up two new baseball teams with these long contracts. Obviously, you can do the draft. I've seen what they do in hockey. But when you have these expansion teams come up, you get to pick up. The contracts in baseball are so much larger now than they were back when, the Diamondbacks and the Rays came into it.
If you were a young baseball player, that's really got to be wonderful. Looking at the opportunity of, rosters, 26, 27 people. So another almost 60 major league jobs have to be created. So if they get players from other teams, there's still 60 new MLB players who right now are probably in AAA or AA biding their time. They're going to have an opportunity to move up faster and create some great opportunity for players.
My idea would be to have the Dodgers field one of those expansion teams. Just the Dodgers would have to release all the talent that they have to be expansion team 2. That would be Portland's play. If you're Portland, you meet with the Dodgers and you say, listen, we don't need anybody else's players. We're just going to take from Portland. So Portland and LA are both competing now with the Japanese market. That would be your instant credibility and your instant competitiveness. So it'd be
the Portland Dodgers and the LA Dodgers.
I would be okay with that because it would split up a team of the Dodgers, which so much talent is ridiculous. So then, therefore, you're going to be fine. Because the other thing that people don't realize, being here in Arizona, the Dodgers are loaded in the minor league system. I think there are two catchers deep right now behind their wonderful young catcher that either have to switch positions or basically beg to be traded to another team or an organization to come up as a catcher. It's really, there are positions like that. It's like the goalie in the NHL kind of thing. There's certain positions that you don't need a lot of them. And so when you get a great guy who's young, like, Buster Posey for San Francisco, for instance, you're not making it to the Giants as a catcher. They got their guy, and the Dodgers have their guy, and then, again, their minor league system's loaded. So that would be the Portland push, is that you would take all the Dodgers. I know that that's not what MLB would do, but that's what I would do if I was them. Nashville kind of is interesting because you're not wrong geographically. Geographically around Nashville, they're surrounded by all of those states, but there really isn't, they're kind of in that in-between zone. So it'd be really interesting what fan base would go to them. I mean, obviously Nashville, but how much of the Dodgers or the Braves would they steal? How much of these other
I don't have a map in front of me. I don't think that they're that far from Cincinnati either. I could be wrong.
No, they're one of the wonderful trivia questions of a state that borders on 8 states.
Oh, wow.
So they're that you couldn't have. It's because of their obviously how long they are, but again, you're right in that hub. So what fans would they steal? I would say the Braves are probably the most committed fans because if you go back to my younger TNT, Turner Sports, Braves on all the time. So it'll be interesting to see what that would look like for fan attendance and for all that. So that'll be an interesting time looking forward. I enjoy the city's projections and the architects they hired to kind of showcase what a Major League Baseball team would look like. We did that a lot here in Arizona when we were trying to woo the Coyotes to stay. We showed everybody all these cool stadiums we could build and all the things that we could have, and everybody said no, and so now they're in Salt Lake. So depends on if voters want to pass it, yada, 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 yada.
Very, very interesting. Well, I can't wait for our show when we start looking into the 2025 season, in which teams are going to surprise, which teams are going to win, and which teams are going to dive.
I do have a question for you on the stadiums. So you make it to the show, you make it to the big dance, and you're a Tampa Bay player or you're an A's player, and you're playing in these small stadiums for 81 games. The thing that I think mentally is a struggle for these players, your locker room is not a Major League Baseball locker room. You don't get the same space. You don't get the same kind of like home field advantage. You're really in a stadium meant for a month or two, not for a 6-7 month season. Wouldn't that take a lot of wind out of your sails as a player to like this? I finally made it, and then you're playing there.
Yeah, I would think so. But you're paid to perform.
Remember that, A's in Tampa. You're paid to perform.
Well, the other thing is, as a player, if you want to get out of there, play well.
Good point.
Play well. Get your contract up, and they'll trade you.
There are teams that are going to be fishing mid-season. The mid-season trades are always interesting. So yes, we'll be diving into the episode of the Who Do We Feel is going to be leading in some of these categories, if you will. We kind of dabbled a little bit, but as we get closer to opening day, we will certainly be doing that. Dad, as always, I appreciate your Arizona Diamondback insider information. For those that are interested in the Diamondbacks, you can subscribe and like us anyways, because the Diamondbacks are the team that is fighting against the evil nemesis of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, we are the fighting the evil empire for sure.
And someone needs to do it, and by golly, we'll take that. We'll take that right on the hat.
Yep.
And I am your host, Brendan. Thank you very much for joining us for SwingBadder. You guys have a great evening.